Welcome to another edition of Inspired Stories, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes, how they've overcome adversity, and explore current challenges they're facing.
Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is Terri Lawson-Adams, CEO and founder of Ellsworth Healthcare Staffing, a full-service agency committed to providing strategic solutions for medical staffing needs. They have created a trusted network to deliver the best talent in a wide range of healthcare specialties. Founded in Tucker, Georgia, they work around the clock to provide contract hiring, direct hire, and executive search services, whether that be for medical facilities across the state of Georgia or throughout the nation. You can find them online at ehstaffing.com. We will hear about Terri's path from college to politics to being a business owner in a different type of business before the idea to get started in medical staffing occurred to her. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. One recent client was able to add over $900 per employee per year in extra cash flow by implementing one of our proprietary programs. Results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefitsagency.com. Now, back to our guest today, the CEO and founder of Ellsworth Healthcare Staffing, Terri Adams. I appreciate you making this time to share your story today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, Terri, so before we get into the origin story of Staffing, tell us in your own words what it does. What specifically does Ellsworth Healthcare Staffing focus on?
So Ellsworth Healthcare Staffing basically is a healthcare staffing agency that focuses on placing nurses and physician staffing in particular. We've currently work with a lot of different agencies or organizations, be it schools, clinics, healthcare facilities. And we're also right now getting into the government space.
Okay. And so when you talk about contracts and direct hire, this doesn't include temporary or PRN placements. Is that correct?
That's correct. So PRN placement is basically when a facility calls and say, hey, I need 2 nurses to work 9 to 5 tomorrow. And then they may not call again for another month or 2. Contract staffing is when they call and say, hey, I need a nurse to work or 2 nurses to work for a year or 5 years or even 12 weeks. But it's more of contract as opposed to just one-offs, basically.
It seems to me like the model that you have settled with the contract hiring versus PRN would be a lot more stable and sort of easier to plan for versus you've got somebody that says, hey, I just need somebody today or tomorrow. And now you've got to go and find somebody who's available just for a day. Is my thinking right in that?
Yes, actually, it's right. And we learned it, I guess, the hard way, trial and error. When we first started, we worked with a consultant who suggested that we start that way. And it was really, really difficult. So what we were doing basically was, let me back up first. We didn't have a business in actual staffing or staffing agency, right? I had experience in recruiting, but not really running an agency. So hired a consultant to help us kind of get started. And that consultant suggested that we start with PRN staffing, which was very difficult. So what we were doing basically, we would go out. We knew we wanted to focus on, at that time, it was CNAs and nurses. We knew we wanted to focus on them. So we started recruiting CNAs and nurses. We started credentialing them, doing background checks. So if you called or any other facility called and say, hey, I need someone tonight or I need someone tomorrow, we thought they'll be ready to go because we have a bench of players per se, right? That can basically, they're ready to go when you call. Well, it's not that simple, because if you go ahead and recruit or hire 100 people You credential them, you do their background checks, you do drug tests, and they're ready to go. But you wait for the facility to call. The facility may or may not call. When they do call, you want work, so you may go and have another job. So it's really, really hard. It's hard to plan. It's hard to forecast. So it's just really difficult. So we learned the hard way, but that's how we started.
And it sounds like it would be rather costly. I mean, if you're talking about building up a bench of 100 people, you've had to do background checks, that costs money. You've had to do drug tests, that costs money, without the assurance that you've got an opportunity to place this person.
We did background checks, we did drug tests, we also did so we had to do all the credentialing, and we also did testing to make sure that they had the skills and ability to perform the job. So we spent all of this money, and of course we didn't get a return on investment because we just lost so much money. Most of the people were gone by the time we got a job for them. Or if they
So,
work one shift or two shifts, then they're gone after that.
so you had a background in the staffing industry, but not specifically in healthcare staffing. What was behind the decision to focus exclusively on the healthcare industry?
Well, let me back up. So my background initially was in campaign management, political consultant. I did a lot of political campaigns, some political consultant. I work with a few elected officials, and I help with hiring. So that was my background at that
Okay.
time. Now I don't know if you want me to go into how it led to Ellsworth Healthcare Staffing, but that
I
was the
want to hear. I
background.
want to hear a little bit about the experience in the political arena. Was that something you always wanted to get into, or did that kind of happen by mistake?
Well, actually, when I was an undergrad, I always liked political things, right? So I followed politics, and I was a business major. And a lot of people were like, you should go to law school or you should go into political science. I said no. But I got a job one summer working with the legislature in Louisiana, and I loved it. And then I got a job working with a senator in Louisiana. Loved it, started, and that basically changed everything. So I thought, okay, I want to do um, politics, working to try to make a difference and a change. Like I said, working with elected officials, helping with campaign management, political consultant was what I liked doing for a while until I had kids and found out it was really difficult because it's almost like a 24/7 job.
Did you find the political work as fulfilling and rewarding as you had hoped it would be? Kind of go into it idealistic, like I want to make a difference. Did you feel like that was actually happening?
In the beginning, I did. And then after a while, I saw some things in politics that were not what I expected. I thought everything was rosy, I guess. And it was fulfilling, but there were things that I just did not like in politics.
Yeah. So that combined with now you're a mother, and this doesn't mesh well because politics requires you to kind of be on call on the clock 24/7. And so, what was the next idea? What was the next phase of your life, Terry?
So after I got to a point where I felt like I wasn't parenting my kids, the nanny was raising the kids, it almost seemed like. And
Mm.
so that was really difficult for me. And so I thought, and then the job itself that I was working in at the time was just so demanding and very stressful. So I decided to leave and be a stay-at-home mom, I thought. But it was really difficult to be a stay-at-home mom for me. I always felt like I needed to do something. So my next phase was I thought, okay, well, what can I do to still make a difference? Because it was always I want to do something to leave an impact, make a difference. So I thought, what can I do? And try to figure it out. And said I needed to do something where I still have time for my kids. I can go and volunteer at school, go on field trips with them, or whatever I needed to do, and still work. That was difficult. I was helping my husband with his business a little. And then I went into buying some real estate. And I thought, well, maybe this would be it because I have flexibility. But if you buy a house and you're holding it, right? You buy it, you put a tenant in, you don't have anything else to do unless, they call and say, hey, the toilet's broken, and then you call a contractor. So that was difficult. I looked, and then I purchased a franchise, and it was I did. I guess it was a tax franchise. It was something I went into really just for. I wanted to. I thought make a difference, but also I thought it would help with doing something, right? I always had this passion for business as well. So I thought, okay, this would be a great business. It would be a turnkey operation. I can have the flexibility with kids. But it was something I really didn't like. And, doing something you really don't like, you're not going to be successful in it. And so I eventually sold the practice.
So, from politics to mom to real estate to tax franchise, a couple of questions along the way. So, I've talked with other guests about this idea of mom guilt, right? Like
Mhm.
you're a smart, professional woman, you've been enjoying a career, you like that, you have a child, love the child, you think I'm going to be a stay at home mom. This is, my new passion, it's my new thing. And that ends up being a much harder transition for a lot of people, a lot of women, than I think they expect. And I saw my wife go through this. And there was a time where she thought, okay, yes, we have the flexibility. I'm going to be a stay at home mom. And then it pretty quickly became clear that that was not wholly fulfilling for her. And she felt terrible about that. Like it made her a bad person or a bad mother, that she wanted to go back to work. She had friends there. She had gone to school for her career. She, practiced it a lot. Like, she was good at it. She wanted to keep doing that. I'm curious if it was a similar kind of experience for you.
Yes, I had lots of guilt. I guess the first thing was I was really passionate about making sure, or really concerned, I guess most parents are, about making sure their kids are happy and healthy. I had a premature, my daughter was premature, well, actually, both of my kids were premature. And so that was so important that I wanted to make sure they got the best. And so I wanted to be there for them to give them everything they needed to make sure they were healthy and thriving kids. And so being at home, I thought could do it. But then, like you said, I felt guilty. I felt guilt. Well, first I felt guilty when I wasn't at home because I felt like I should be with them, the nanny's raising them. Then I felt guilty when I was home and I wasn't working. I felt like I always wanted to be this career woman, and here I am, stay at home mom. So I had these conflicting feelings and emotions constantly. And again, so I kept thinking, well, I can do something that won't really take me away from them. When they're in school, I can do this. When they're, and then when they're not in school, I can be with them. And it was just really, really difficult. And something about saying, oh, I'm a stay at home mom, just I don't know, because I always wanted to be this career
Mm.
woman, that it was challenging for me. And some people are fine either way. I have friends who say I would never stay at home. I'm a professional and this is what I'm going to do. Then I have some friends who say I am dedicated to my kids and I'm never going back to work until my kids are out of the home. And here I am in the middle. So I thought, a lot of times, what's wrong with me? So it was really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, parts of your identity are fractured, right?
Right.
You had this identity as a professional woman. Now you're also a mother and you want to be a professional woman. And how do I sort of straddle these two worlds? It can be challenging. So you had the idea to go into real estate because that'll give you some extra flexibility. But like you pointed out, you get a tenant in, like there's not a whole lot more work to do for the most part. So you had the idea to buy a tax franchise. Did you have a background in tax?
I used to do a lot of taxes in undergrad for people. And so, yes, somewhat. But the, so let me tell you, so the real estate, it was I guess in particular, it was my grandfather, when I was growing up, always talked about financial independence, about investing money, about, doing things that's going to help you when you're older and to create some generational wealth. And I have a brother who did really well, or still does, in real estate investing. So that's how I thought about the real estate part of it. I still have properties, but it wasn't a full-time thing. I didn't go all in. I wasn't buying 100 houses at a time like some people I know, or 50 houses at a time, or, you know, these huge apartment complexes. But that was the reason why I did it. But I thought it would have been more fulfilling. Like I said, I still have properties. It's fulfilling in the sense that I know I provide affordable housing for people who could not otherwise afford a home. And so, and so I still feel like I'm giving back some kind of way or doing something to make a difference, but it's not a full-time job.
So I think it's helpful to kind of hear this path because, listeners may not realize that, people who eventually find and create a successful business, it's usually not the first thing that they've tried. There's been a path along the way where they've picked up skills, they've learned lessons, and then they find the thing that just sort of clicks for them, which seems like, it's the healthcare staffing industry for you. How did the idea to start this first come up then? Let's talk a little bit more about that.
So healthcare staffing came up after I sold my franchise, and I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do? What's the next move? And I, thought about it for a while, could not figure out what that would be. And I kept thinking, I love helping people find jobs. And so I would connect people sometime. They would say, hey, can you call, the senator to ask him, can he help me with a job? Or, a senator may call me and say, hey, can you help me fill this position? So I was always connecting people. And it felt good to help people find jobs and to help people who are looking for candidates get jobs filled for them. And so I kept thinking, well, maybe I should do staffing. But then I would kind of dismiss the idea because I felt like I did not have experience to do a staffing agency. And then my mother fell in 2016. She was in a hospital. And while she was there, we were noticing we were having issues with nurses. We would call a nurse wouldn't come. And it was just so many issues with the nurses. And I remember speaking with the director of nursing to complain. And then she had me talk to chief medical officer, and we were just talking, and they were saying to me basically that they had staffing issues. And they were telling me that they were changing their MSP. And at the time, of course, I had no idea what MSP was. The only thing I knew was I needed a nurse for my mom. And so I remember that evening thinking, maybe I should do something in healthcare staffing. Maybe I should help staff nurses because I saw there was an issue. I dismissed it, but then moved forward. A couple of weeks later, my mom's in rehab, and the rehab facility, there were issues with staffing as well. I remember sitting down speaking to the executive director there, complaining. And I even said, well, let me help you find an agency. So I'm looking for an agency for her. And they didn't have a contract with them. And this was after hours. And so you couldn't get through. And so I started thinking then maybe this is what I should do. Um, I recognize that how families feel when their loved one is having a medical challenge and they don't have the care that they expect or deserve because of staffing shortage. Then I also recognize that, so I would be helping the patient, the family, and then a facility that needs the staff that would also help them. And then, of course, just helping people with jobs. So that's when I decided I wanted to do healthcare staffing.
So what is an MSP? So Terri, what is an MSP?
A managed service provider. So hospitals and facilities sometime will hire one company to manage all of their staffing. They contract labor. For instance, say you're a hospital A. Hospital A can have 100 different vendors that are helping staff the hospital, right? However, instead of doing that, they've decided to do a managed service provider where they take one staffing agency to, they'll give them all the jobs, and that agency or managed service provider will send out the jobs to all of the agencies that work under them. and it will the managed service provider does the staffing for the hospital.
Gotcha. So you've decided that you're going to get into the healthcare staffing space. There's a lot that you don't know at this point, right? You're just kind of you're putting your foot in the water for the first time. You mentioned that you hired a consultant. Was that a helpful step in that learning process?
Well, I think every
Yeah.
experience is a learning experience and a lesson,
Okay.
right? So no matter what, it was an experience. It helped me a little. Um, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have done a little bit more research and had a different consultant, maybe.
Mm.
But it taught me what not to do.
Okay.
Um, but it did give me a foundation. I will say that. And so there's a benefit, like I said, in every experience, no matter what it is, good or bad. So there was some benefit. But I think the biggest benefit I got was well, let me back up. So I was struggling to figure out this business, right? And my staff and I trying to figure it out. And I thought, I need to join a trade organization
Mm.
that I can meet other people in the industry and learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined American Staffing Association. However, because I'm trying to run a business, I really didn't have time to get involved. So I joined, but I didn't have the time. And I was getting emails 2, 3, 4 a day from American Staffing. And of course, I would just ignore them because I had no time. And one day I looked and I saw a guy speaking on a there was a email from American Staffing, and they had a picture of him, and he was from Atlanta, Georgia. So I thought, he's here in Atlanta. So I reached out to him, met with him, and I think that was a thing that kind of changed everything for me.
Wow.
He basically he staffed physicians. So that was exciting because I had no idea when I reached out to him that he staffed physicians. So he was in the healthcare space. In addition to that, he was very active with American Staffing Association. And he said, if I can give you one piece of advice, join American Staffing Association. And I said, I'm already a member. So he said, well, you need to get involved. You need to go to their conferences. And that changed everything for me because I went to the conference. The conference was maybe in a couple of weeks. And I thought, I don't think I can't afford to go to this conference. He was like, you got to go to this conference. So I went, and it just changed everything to open doors. Now I can call people if I have questions or concerns about things. So it just really helped me.
Did it help mostly from like an education standpoint? Like here are some ways that you can think about finding clients and finding contract workers. Did it help because you were able to actually find clients there? Talk to me about the benefits.
Well, the benefits were, first of all, I was talking to other business owners in the staffing industry, right? And so if I needed a question about um, sales or recruiting or whatever, right? I can call them and say, hey, I'm having a challenge with this. Can you help me? I was able to join they have different groups, right? Industry groups. So I was able to join a healthcare sector. And so the healthcare sector was people that are all in healthcare. So I was able to pick up the phone, call them if I have questions. Not necessarily, didn't necessarily help me with clients, but helped me to look at ways to find clients, look at different ways to do business. If I have questions about legal issues around staffing, ASA has a legal team. I can send the question to
Mm.
them. They can, help me with it or answer it or give me some advice. So that's how it helped me. I'm still very passionate about American Staffing Association and involved. I think it's a wonderful organization. And again, I would say anyone in staffing should be a member of American Staffing Association.
Well, that is quite an endorsement. And I think you hit on a good point here. Myself having been in several businesses and talking to peers of mine and other guests, one of the things that business owners face a lot is isolation. We feel like we're sort of alone. We don't, our employees turn to us when they have questions and they need guidance, but who do we turn to? And when you can find, I call it a mastermind, a network, an industry association like that, where there's other like-minded people in a similar space, man, what a great group of people that you can lean on, that you can learn from, and and support each other. So I think it's tremendous that you found that.
It is, and I'll tell you, during the pandemic, American Staffing started what I think is a brilliant idea. They started having these peer groups. So they will take, if you wanted to be involved with people in a peer group. So it was other business owners that were perhaps the same size as yours throughout the country. They would put you in a peer group. So we started, I think our peer group started in 2020, and our group is still together today.
Mm.
We've had maybe one or two new members, and we've lost a couple, but for the most part, we're still together. And so our peer group meet once a month, and we just talk about our challenges and help each other. So if you have a challenge with sales, they may say, "This is what I do to increase my sales," or with recruiting, whatever it is. We talk about different softwares, just strategies, in general.
So everybody who's in this peer group, they're also specifically in medical staffing. Maybe they're
No,
similar sized companies.
they're a similar size. We're in all different areas. I think there's
Mm.
one lady in my group that does some medical staffing. There's two people in IT. There's someone in light industrial. So we're in just different areas. There's one in no, two in administrative staffing. Trying to think what the other two are in, but we're all in different things. Some of us do just direct hire, and that's it.
Mm.
And then there are others that do contract staffing
Gotcha. When you were
or a
first
combination
starting,
of both.
I'm sorry, I
Sorry,
cut you off there, Terry. Go ahead.
I said, or they do a combination of both, like we do.
So when you were first starting out, you decided to hire a consultant. I'm curious, did you consider maybe going the franchise route? You had done that before with the tax business. Was that a thought process here?
I considered it. My concern with franchise, and not to put any franchises down, because there are some benefits to a franchise, right? So you have basically, when you have a franchise, it's a turnkey operation, right? However, there's limitations. You have territory restrictions. If you want to pivot to something else, you got to follow that franchise model.
Mm.
Franchise, of course they do marketing for you, but you pay for marketing, advertising, and the franchise fee. And so all of those things, royalties and advertising, cuts into your bottom line. And in the beginning, it's helpful, but once you kind of figure out what you're doing, then it could, depending on the industry, right? It could be something where you just kind of feel like you're just kind of giving money away.
Mm.
Um, Now, granted, you got the brand and recognition. The consultant I felt was better because once I learned the business, then I can do whatever I want, and I don't have to. I'm not obligated to paying a fee each month.
Yeah.
So there are pros and cons to it.
Where does the name Ellsworth come from?
Ellsworth is actually my husband's middle name. He really doesn't like it, but I
So
always
you
spell
decided to put it out there for the world to see, put it front and center, huh?
my husband and my son his middle name Ellsworth. I think it sounds distinguished and I love it. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to use something. So that's where Ellsworth comes from.
I like it. How does he feel about the company name now?
He's okay now. My
Yeah.
son at first was like, what are you doing? What? But they're fine with it now.
Terry, what was it like running your business through COVID?
COVID was very difficult. And actually, I thought COVID was going to shut us down. We were a new business, basically still almost in startup mode. COVID hit, and we were basically at that time we were doing home care services, and we were also staffing at assisted living facilities and nursing homes. And that was our primary business. And we had just gotten a contract. We were subcontractors on a county contract, and the contract started January of 2020. So by March of 2020, the county sent something and said, and it was for home care. They shut down everything. So we were all excited, ramped up to do this contract, right? And it's like our entrance into the government space and contracting, and it was shut down. Then we had a lot of our facilities where we were staffing, either a lot of people had COVID and they were dying from COVID, or their loved ones were taking them out of the facility because they had so much COVID. And so we almost had no business. And it was very scary. I remember thinking, how are we going to survive? And then, probably so this was March. By May, mid May, late May, we started getting calls for COVID related services. So, first it was, we need people to do temperature checks. Then it was, we need people, we want nurses. One of our biggest clients at the time was a art supply company, which was pretty odd. And they wanted all of these nurses around the clock. They business exploded because people were at home, right? The
Oh, okay.
shutdown. So everybody wanted art supplies. So they wanted the business to keep, they wanted to keep their business flowing. And so they wanted to make sure everyone was safe. So they wanted nurses there for emergency. They wanted temperature checks. They wanted everything to try as much as possible to keep everything going. So we were staffing around the clock for them. Then we'd already had staffed at some schools, but then some of the schools were trying to figure out how to go back to school. And so they wanted to have people to do, at that point, that's when I guess they had the vaccination came out. And so they wanted people they wanted to test the COVID testing. They wanted to make sure the temperature checks. So we had nurses for that. Then we had people do vaccinations. We were getting not hospitals, universities. Most of the major universities here called us, and we either had people doing the temperature checks, COVID tests, the wellness center, the quarantine units. So COVID, we pivoted, and that's when I really learned about the contract staffing and how much easier it was and how much more sense it made to do contract staffing as opposed to the PRN staffing. And from that, we also started getting some direct hire or executive search requests as well.
So that going through that whole process of COVID kind of led you into adjusting your business model to get away from PRN.
Yes.
Yeah. More into contract hire and the direct placement. And so I'm curious, why do the hospitals come to you, or the medical facilities come to you to find these folks to place there for periods of time rather than going and hiring people directly?
Well, there are a few reasons. So if you're a facility and your job basically is to make sure you take care of your patients, you may have some HR people, but sometimes they're hard to fill roles and it takes up so much time, they will call an agency. A lot of times it's because the agency, we have a pool of people that we can get. That's all we do all day, every day, right? And so we know different ways of trying to find people. And their HR department may do some recruiting, but they do a lot of HR things as well. And so they'll come for that. A lot of times, too, they'll want to try someone out before they go through hiring them, right? So if they do a temp to perm, that means they can try someone. It's almost like try before you buy, right? So they can try someone for 3, 4 months, sometime even longer, and see if they like them. And if they do, then they convert them to their payroll. When they're working for us as contract employees, they're our employees. They're our employees. We pay taxes, we pay insurance, all of that. The facility doesn't have to do any of it. Facility is just paying us. So, we build a facility, they pay us. They don't have to worry about unemployment, any of those things that our agency will have to deal with because they're our employee. Now, there are some agencies that don't hire people correctly. They make them all 1099s and not really employees. We don't do that because Well, it's the law that, they're supposed to be, they're our employees, so we need to work. They need to work as W-2 employees. We take out the taxes, we pay the insurance, all of that. And so a facility will use an agency for those purposes, basically.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, on the administrative side, it's much easier, right? They don't have to do the payroll taxes and all that kind of compliance. They just send you an invoice every month. And, the other thing that you said made me realize it's, sort of like, okay, the hospital, they want to do some marketing. Do they have people inside the hospital that know something about marketing? Yeah, maybe. But chances are pretty good they're going to go out and hire a specialist. They're going to go out and hire a marketing agency to help them because that's what that company does all day, every day. They've got a lot of experience to pull from. It's very similar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they've done some of their own hiring before, but there are a lot of advantages to coming to, Ellsworth Staffing and in being able to tap into the experts who've got a pool of talent there, that they can draw from. And the other thing that you mentioned that really turned a light on for me is this idea of sort of try before you buy, right? You get to date somebody before you decide if they're a good cultural fit for your organization, and then it's like, oh yes, this person has been fantastic. We would love to have them join us, or you know what? I think it's a good time for us to transition onto somebody else. So,
Yes, that's the advantage for the contract staffing. Of course, with executive search or direct hire, we're doing a search for them. And,
mm,
they'll hire the person. But we do the search, we do all the interviewing, everything, and then we present them to the client. If the client's interested, it's a yay or nay. And then they'll decide.
and that's a time-consuming process,
It is.
right? To find those people, to just whittle it down to a list of folks that you want to interview, and then to whittle that down even further to, okay, here's our recommendations. There's a lot of value in that, and
Right.
not having to chew up the time of the hospital staff to try to do that.
Yes.
You know, and so I'm curious, because I talk to a lot of business owners, and I continue to hear that it's still a pretty tight labor market. Hard to find good folks, hard to hold on to good folks. Terri, in your position, what are some things that you've tried that have worked well, either from a recruiting standpoint or from a retention standpoint?
I think the things that work well for us is that again, with recruiting, we use different avenues. We don't just go to one job board to look for people. We also have, because we have lots of a database of clinicians that work for us, right, or providers. We, a lot of times we go to them and they give us referrals.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of connections with clinicians and providers that can give us provide referrals. We use several different avenues and tools to look for people as well. So that's helped us. I think with retention, just treating people well, that's
Mm-hmm.
helped. We also stay in contact with people even when they're not on assignment or we don't have an assignment for them. But I think it's really important to try to treat people well, get to know them, understand their likes, their dislikes, their wants. And so we present opportunities for them that we know will be a good fit for them. We're not just saying, "Hey, Anthony, we have a job for you and, you're a nurse. So this is your RN, here's a job for you. Anthony, this is a job for you because we understand that you
Mm-hmm.
only want to work weekends. You want to have the week off to be with your kids or be available for them. So this, and it's closer to your home. So we have that kind of knowledge and that relationship that we've built in a rapport with the clinicians and providers. So I think that's what also makes it a benefit to work with us.
You get to know the providers on a personal level, right?
Yeah.
These are their likes, their dislikes, what their
Mhm.
preferences are. And so you're not coming to them with 12 opportunities that don't match what they're looking for. You're being respectful and saying, hey, we waited to contact you until we found something that we think is going to be a good fit for you. And that develops a level of trust and respect there.
Yes. And now there's some time, like I have a nurse who said, "Hey, I only want to work this type of assignment at a private school. I don't want anything else. I only want to work these hours, nothing else." And then she sees a job that we have posted for our, let's say, a hospital. Then she's like, "Oh, I'm interested." Like, wait a minute, you said you were only interested. Yeah, 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 but that changed. So sometimes, their
We're
preferences do
people. Our
change.
preferences change. Things change.
Hmm. Or
Circumstances
things that are
change.
important to you at one point is no longer important, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so I fully understand now why a hospital or medical facility would come to you to ask for help in their staffing. Now let's look at it from the other point of view for the contract workers, or let's talk specifically about contract workers. Why do they enjoy working with you in Ellsworth Healthcare Staffing as opposed to going and finding a full-time position at one of these facilities on their own?
Now, there are some nurses, for instance, or even providers that only want to work. We have some that say, I'm only working during the school year because I want to be home in the summer or I want to travel in the summer. And so it's easier to come to an agency or like us to find something that kind of meet their needs. Um, a lot of them also know they may have to go and apply for 100 jobs before they find that job that they want. But if they come to us, we can look for the jobs that they're looking for or what they
Mm,
want. And we try to find things that meet their needs. And so, and then like I said, we give a personalized touch. We have great relationships. And I think all of those things, the trust, as well as knowing that we really understand their needs and trying to meet their needs, those things, I guess, make it attractive for them to come work with us.
mm. So one of the things as business owners that we always have to keep our eye on is the bottom line, right, Terry? So I like to think of these as sort of two main levers that we can pull. One is like, okay, how do we increase sales? And the other one is how do we decrease expenses? If you think about your role and your world and those two levers, any creative, interesting things that you've done to move either one of those levers, either in increasing sales or decreasing expenses?
I guess one of the things with sales is, I don't know if it's as I guess it's somewhat creative. We basically know that, well, one, I think we increase sales when we know that we're a niche agency, right? And so when we're talking to people, when we tell them our differentiators, that helps us with sales. In addition to, not a lot of staffing agencies are joint commission certified. We have the joint commission gold seal, right? Seal of approval.
What is that?
So basically, if you go to any hospital or medical facility, you will see joint commission certification. All of them have to be certified. What it basically says is that you have to meet certain standards. Um, so they have to meet standards for the care as well as for providing the care, right? And so the clinicians and providers they hire have to meet certain standards. And we, as a staffing agency, we work by those same standards. And so with Joint Commission, they do reviews. They're constantly looking at our processes, our systems, the way we staff people, how we credential them, just the whole business as a whole. And so if an organization call us and they see that we join commissions, at least, particular a healthcare organization, right? They know that we're meeting certain standards in order to be joint commission certified. So
Gotcha.
that helps us stand out as well. And that helps with sales. Now your question was about how do we any creative ways. So the creative ways, I guess, is like I said, one, we're starting to try to do interesting, to get on more podcasts. We would like to get on podcasts that's kind of geared towards the healthcare industry. We are, now working on trying to do some more webinars, just different creative ways to try to get our name out to help increase sales. Now, how we, of course, with the bottom line, one of the things we've done is when COVID hit, of course, we had to, in our office space, everyone was working from home. So we had to learn how to work from home. That was difficult, especially with recruiting. I used to believe that I needed people to come in face to face and meet with them. I felt like you get to know a person better if you meet with them face to face. I would talk to other agencies that would say, we staff all over the world and we don't meet people face to face. And I
Mm.
said, well, I'm not comfortable with that. And they were like, well, you're not going to scale. Or I said, well, I can. And they were like, well, I guess you can scale in your area. But if someone's somewhere around the state, how are you going to meet with them face to face unless you have offices everywhere? So when COVID hit, we learned to adapt and adjust. And now we do all of our interviewing virtually, which has saved us money. And so we had our offices, and then we started working after, I guess, after 2021, 2022, we started doing hybrid. And then earlier this year, we have totally, everyone's working from home right now. So it's been interesting that we've
Yeah.
changed.
Terry, what's a particular challenge, either personal or professional, that you've overcome? What was that process like, and what did you learn coming through it?
I guess, like I said, the challenge during COVID was my biggest
Mm.
challenge, right? Like I said, I thought we were going to be out of business. And what I learned from that is, if you just keep working, have faith also. And, if you have to pivot and be flexible, be prepared to do that. And that's what we did. And we overcame it. I can also say now, the staffing space right now, our numbers, I think around the board, is down. People in all forms of staffing, it seems like the numbers are down. They're going up a little bit. And we just, I'm hopeful that well, I'm confident that they will turn around. But, I know that in businesses, you're going to, sometime in business, period, you're going to have the upturn, downturns, but you just have to be prepared and ride out the wave and know that you'll be fine.
Yeah, I do hear that talking with a lot of folks in the staffing space is that it's in a bit of a lull. Numbers are down.
hmm
Um, it, any theories on why that is from your side?
I think from our side in the healthcare in particular, is that during COVID, the nurses were, I mean, they were to go to work. They wanted, premium pay. And I understand because they were being exposed to COVID, right? Or they were leaving their families. And so if they wanted premium pay, agencies had to charge the clients, higher rates. So the bill rates were higher. And at the time also, the schools, the universities, hospitals, all healthcare facilities were also getting funding from the government, the COVID funding. So when the COVID funding ended and it was still paying the premium rates, a lot of them are having some financial challenges. And so they're cutting back and they're trying to find ways to decrease the money that they spend on staffing,
Yeah.
to kind of help with their bottom line. So in turn, it's impacting us because the need's not there like it was before.
So the need's actually gone down because COVID is more in the background now. It's not front and center. It's not requiring somebody to take temperatures and give vaccines at different workplaces, and so the needs have just shifted there.
For us in particular. But
Yeah.
even if you weren't doing COVID vaccinations, temperature checks, or like schools increased, some schools have one or two nurses, that's all they had. And then during COVID, they needed 10 nurses because they wanted
Yeah.
to make sure, and so all of that, those needs have decreased. And like I said, with the hospital, some of them, they were having financial challenges, so they were trying to figure out ways not to use agencies.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
again, I guess for us, because we do direct hire as well, it kind of helps us a little bit, right? So we can at least staff people directly for the facility as opposed to just the contract labor.
Makes sense. Terry, what's a fun or interesting fact that most people might not know about you?
I think one of the interesting things about me is that I am passionate about health and fitness. I I work out often. I walk and run a lot. Um, and most people, especially people who knew me when I was younger, they'll be shocked to hear that. Um, so I think that's interesting. I'm trying to think if there's something else interesting. But I think that's the interesting thing right now.
Okay. Terry, any mentors or books that have been helpful to you in your path you want to give a call out to?
Like I said, I had some mentors. The first one was his name is Ken Thornton. Ken was the person who told me about American Staffing.
Mm.
Um, and that's helped me. I've had two other business mentors, Therese Baker and Delipa Wesley. They're with American Staffing. They've helped me. Um, Books. So I read a lot of books. Atomic Habits.
James Clear.
Actually, the Miracle Morning was something that it really helped me
I think that's
start
Hal
my
Elrod.
day. Yes. Have you read it?
I have. It's been a little bit, but it's a good reminder for me to go back to it. Give our listeners a little synopsis of what they can expect from it.
Well, it just basically talks about how you start your day can kind of set you up, right, for success. With it, it talks about um, basically he looked at all successful people and what do they do? What do they have in common? And then he put all of their habits into one, the morning miracle. So it's, exercise, meditation, um, let's see, I'm reading, um, writing, scribing, and gratitude.
Mm.
Am I missing one? I think I have all of them. Do you remember, Anthony?
I don't know. This has been a good refresher for me.
Okay, yeah, I think that was all of them, but basically, it really really helped me, and I think I highly recommend people consider reading it.
That's great. Um, just got one more question for you, Terry. But before I ask it, I want to do two things. For those listening today, if you like today's content, please hit the like, share, subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. Terry, I also want to let people know the best way to get in touch with you. What would that be?
They can go to our website, which is ehstaffing.com. That's E for Ellsworth, H for healthcare, and the word staffing.com. Or they can email us at info@ehstaffing.com.
And you know what? I have to apologize. I lied. I actually have two more questions for you. I want to hear about what future growth looks like before I ask my last question. You guys have some plans in the works? Anything that you want to share?
We are looking at doing more. We would like to do some federal government contracting. So we are looking at, focusing on those federal governmental agencies that in particular have a need for, healthcare staffing, nurses and providers. And we are hoping to grow in the government space.
That's exciting. We'll have to have you back on when you've made some progress on that front to see how it's going.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
so last question for you, Terry. I'm curious, what do you think the big changes are that are coming to your industry in the next couple of years? Sort of seeing the arc of COVID, things are kind of settling down into a new normal. What do you think the next couple of years looks like?
I actually think that, there are some companies that are closing down, unfortunately.
Mm.
I think we're going to see more, as you know, AI and everything, right? So I think AI is going to help with some recruiting and staffing. I think it's going to help with growth as well. It also is going to perhaps level the playing field with small companies being able to kind of compete with some of the larger companies by the use of AI technology. But of
How do
course,
you
as we
see,
think, you still need the human touch.
yeah, how do you see AI? Like, let me ask a couple of questions actually. How are you using AI, if at all, right now in your business?
Right now, we're using it only with, we use Chat GPT. It helps us sometime when we're doing a job description, it'll help us rewrite a job description. Um, we use it for more of those things, and when we write things, sometimes we send it and say, help rewrite this for us or give us some suggestions. Um, But I do believe, like, I see AI helping with, there are some platforms right now with recruiting. I haven't bought it yet or been sold totally, where AI can call thousands of people at one time and do, the initial interviewing. I still believe in the personal human touch. And I don't know if automated assistant call me and question me and want to interview me, if I would be comfortable or
Mm.
even interested. But there are some people that use it and they've had some great success with it. So I see it changing, and maybe it'll get better, and maybe, you reach out to me, um, you know, in a year, and I say, guess what? I'm using AI to do our interviewing. I don't know. Our initial interviewing, but I don't see it. But a lot of companies are starting to use it.
What do you think your next step with AI could be for your company?
I think my next step could be basically where AI, if someone comes to our website, and you probably see this with the chat boxes, right? Um, but it can kind of interact with people when we're not in the
Mm.
office, um, and kind of, ask, send your resume, send your credentials, things like that. And then when we come back into the office, AI has already collected all of the stuff that we need. I can see using that.
Yeah, I've been to a number of websites that have the chat bots, and it's pretty clear to me now which ones are using the old style chat bots, which are not helpful, never have been,
No.
and those are using the new AI powered chat bots, which I would say maybe 70% of the time they're actually able to answer my question and do it very well. So
That's
that would
what I
make
see.
a great next step. Yeah, it makes sense as
Yeah.
a great next step for you.
Yeah, because the old ones are frustrating. I know most of us, most people, most of your listeners have probably dealt with it, where, like you said, you ask it a question and it keeps asking, it doesn't give you the answer. And it's like, are you a computer? Because you kind of know. But the new AI generated ones are, um, some of them are really powerful.
No. Well, Terri, I want to be the first to thank you for sharing both your time and your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me.
Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.